early part is French literature. France. In ancient times, France was part of the Celtic territory known as Gaul or Gallia. Celtic means it is a widespread group of people with origins in Central Europe. Its present name is derived from the Latin Francia, meaning country of Franks. And then pag sinabi naman natin country of Franks, they are the Germanic people who conquered the area during the 5th century at the time of fall of the Western Roman Empire. Their capital is Paris, and their main language is French. And the primary religion of France is Catholicism. Next. French literature. It is the body of written works in the French language produced within the geographical and political boundaries of the France. Pag sinabi naman natin geographical boundaries, it is the lines that divide one country from another. Tinatawag din ito na borders. And then pag sinabi naman natin political boundaries, ito yung imaginary line na nagse-separate sa political unit. And the French language was one of the 5 major Romance languages to develop from Vulgar Latin as a result of the Roman occupation of the Western Europe. Sinasabi dito na yung French language daw ay isa sa mga lengguwahe na develop mula sa Vulgar Latin. Pag sinabing Vulgar Latin is language of people sa France, and then dahil daw sa pananakop ng mga Romano sa Western Europe. French literature is the body of written works in French language produced by the authors from the France. The French people are proud of their language and of their long tradition of poetry, prose, and drama. Next. The genres of French play include tragicomedy, tragedy, satire, romance, mythopoeia, lyric, nonsense, erotic, epic, drama, and comedy. Pag sinabi natin tragicomedy, it is a genre that blends elements of both comedy and tragedy. A tragicomedy can either be a serious play with a happy ending. And then pag sinabi naman natin tragedy, it has a sad ending. Satire, they use irony or exaggeration to criticize people's stupidity or vices. And then romance. The theme is love. Mythopoeia naman is the artificial mythology. And then pag lyric, personal emotions or poetry. And then pag nonsense, and then erotic, it focuses on sex and romance. And then pag sinabi namang epic, heroic deeds yung main themes. And then pag drama, there are a lot of conflicts and the characters are emotionally driven. Pag comedy naman, to entertain and provoke enjoyment. Poetry was derived from a variant form of a word in Greek poesis, which means implies to make. Next. The history of French literature. There are 7 periods of French literature. One is the medieval period, 16th century period, 17th century period, 18th century period, 19th century period, 20th century period, and the contemporary period. Next. The medieval French literature, written in early Middle and Old French language. It was the literary works carried out between the 11th century and the 15th century. This period saw different genres of creative work carried out by the poets, clerks, jongleurs, and writers. Pag sinabi nating poets, it is a person who writes a poem. And then pag sinabi naman nating clerks, they are the French educators. And jongleurs, they are the medieval entertainer. And the genres of the theater in French literature includes passion play, miracle play, morality play, and mystery play, and then courtly love. Next. It is the author Marie de France, 1140 to 1200s. She is the author in the medieval period. Marie Hubert de France is a French poet. He is the France's first woman poet. The most famous of her works are the Lays, which are thought to be written before 1180. Pag sinabing Lays, it is a short narrative poems inspired by the ancient plays of Briton harpists, but treated in a very personal way. Magical and fantastic elements are interwoven with both heroic and simple human deeds. Heroic and simple human deeds daw yung main theme ng Lays. And then, she also translated and adapted fables which were published under the title Aesopet. Pag sinabi naman nating Aesopet, it is a collection of 103 moral fables with traces of satire written in verse. Next will be J.R. Villanueva. Thank you.
Good afternoon, classmates. Good afternoon, ma'am. Friend, I am J.R. Villanueva, and to continue the report, French Renaissance literature. It is the literature is literary works carried out between 1494 and 1600. It is also Renaissance literature also refer to the cultural and artistic movement in France between 15th and early 17th century. The word Renaissance is a French word whose literal meaning in English is revert. Why it is called revert? Because during this time, the European society underwent a huge changes. The artists from Italy began to revive the heritage of Greek and Rome antiquity. Antiquity means ancient times. And during this period, we have three writers that we consider as the three giants of world literature. Why we consider there as three giants? Because they are the three that brings a huge impact on poetry. First one is Francis Rabelais. Francis Rabelais, Francis Rabelais, he is a physician, priest, and notable writer. He is famous for his satirical nature. When we say satirical nature naman, it means use of irony and usually tumatalakay sa government. And his famous work is Gargantua Pantagruel. It is a series of 4 books published from 1532 to 1535. The Gargantuan Pantagruel provides an appreciation for secular learning as well as confidence in nature. It attacks both clerical education and monastic orders. The major theme in the story is religion, education, and marriage. And the next one is Pierre de Ronsard. Pierre de Ronsard. He was educated in College of Navarre in Paris. He is a poet, chief among the French Renaissance group of poets known as La Pléiade. La Pléiade, it is a group of 7 French writers of the 16th century, led by Pierre de Ronsard, whose aim was to elevate the French language to the level of the classical tongues as a medium for literary expression. His numerous collection of poetry was Odes in 1550, Les Amours in 1552, Le Bocage in 1554, and La Pranciada in 1572. And the other one is Michael de Montaigne. He is considered as the father of modern skepticism. Michael de Montaigne is an influential and key figure of the French Renaissance. He is best known for his essays, which are considered to be the best of all times. He is also considered as the first person to use the word essay to describe his writings. And his work, he is known for his work Isaias. It is a large collection of short essays. It was published in 1580. The essay are the reflection of Montaigne's personality, his interest, and learning. They describe human, particularly Montaigne himself. Next summit. Yan, 17th century. 17th century naman. It was the literary work carried out all through France Grand Siècle. Grand Siècle remains or refer to the period of French history during the 17th century under the reign of King Louis XIII and King Louis XIV. Grand Siècle means great century. It is called great century because they saw the establishment of France's hegemony in Europe, its expansion overseas, the efflorescence of French classical culture, and the Senate of absolute monarchy. Next summit. Author during this time is Jean de La Fontaine. He is a French poet. And notable for his fable. He is known above all his fables, which provide a model for subsequent fables across Europe and numerous alternative versions in France, as well as in French regional languages. And one of his work is the Les Fables Josias. It is a story between the frog and the ox. The second one is Jean Racine. Jean Racine naman is a French dramatic poet and historiographer, known for his mastery of French classic tragedy. Tragedy nga means may malungkot na katapusan. One of his work is the Andromaque. It is performed during 1667, and Racine replaced heroism with realism in a tragedy about the holy and blindness unrequited love with a chain of 4 characters. Next summit. 18th century naman in France, literary work was between 1715 and 1798. French literature between 1715. It's also the year of the death of King Louis XIV of France, and in 1798, the year of coup d'etat of Bonaparte. Coup d'etat de Bonaparte means overthrow the system of government under the Directory of France. This event is often viewed as the effective end of the French Revolution. The period was also notable for advances in drama and fiction. And there are some notable authors during this 18th century. Next, Amit. Voltaire. His real name was Francis Marie Arobet. He was a key figure in the European intellectual movement known as the Enlightenment. And one of his work is the Letters Philosophiques in 1734. Letters Philosophiques, pag tinranslate natin siya sa English, it means letter on the English. It is a primarily a demonstration of the benign effect of religious toleration. They contrast the wise empiricist psychology of Locke with the conjunctual locubration of René Descartes. René Descartes, one of the scientists during this time. And the other one is Candide in 1759. It is a satirical novel published in 1759. It used the irony and about the government of France during 18th century. Next summit. 19th century. French history centered between 1799 and 1940. It's also known as the Victorian period. French literature enjoyed huge international success and prestige in this period. During the first half of the century, first literature was dominated by Romanticism, associated with such author as Victor Hugo. Romanticism means love. Panagsabi. Victor Hugo is a poet, novelist, and dramatist. He described himself as a humanitarian who used literature as a means to describe the human condition and the injustice of society. And he is best known for his work, Les Miserables or The Miserable, Notre Dame de Paris. And he attained his great panexami. Si Alexandre Dumas naman. Si Alexandre Dumas, he is known for his historical novel. He attained his great reputation or nakilala siya first as a dramatist, then as a historical novel. Una siyang sumikat as a dramatist bago pa siya maging historical novel. And his work, or he is known for his work, The Three Musketeers, The Count of Monte Cristo, The Man in the Iron Mask, and The Nutcracker. Panagsomic. And the last one, the 20th century, or the 20th century. Algerian Independence War. French history spanned from 1900 to 1999. There were several developments in French literary work during the period. During this time, the Algerian Independence War, a war between France and Algerian National Liberation Front in 1954 to 1962. And this war brings Algeria their independence. Nanalo ang Algeria laban sa France. And French colonialism as well as Dreyfus Affair. Pag sinabi namang Dreyfus Affair, it is a political scandal or crisis that divided the Third French Republic from 1894 until its resolution in 1906. Panagsabi. And one of the notable authors during the 20th century in France is Jean-Paul Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre is a philosopher, playwright, novelist, political activist, and biographer. He is one of the leading figures. He is awarded the 1964 Nobel Prize in Literature but refused the honor. And some of his work is Nausea in 1938, Being and Nothingness in 1943, and Existentialism and Humanism in 1946. Yun lamang po at maraming salamat.